Forge in their black and gray alternates with the orange accents. Now here's Gabriel less than 25 seconds into the game, and it just keeps getting worse for Forge.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 11 in the CPL Newsroom, brought to you by Volkswagen. Adam Jenkins with the words, it doesn't get any better than that, as we end on a highlight from Ali Musi. It might get better, just with a little jazz, little flute, little saxophone, little CPL action, all the great goals. What a week it's been, my word. A fantastic week. Pleasure to join you. If you are joining us live, we're going to get to our usual recap very soon. For the next hour or so, we will recap week 11 in the Canadian Premier League, and we'll be later joined by Cavalry FC head coach Tommy Olden Jr. live after a big weekend for him. Let's take a look at the results. We did have 3 games in midweek. Vancouver Football Club beat Forge 2-0 back on Tuesday night in one of the big shocks of the CPL season so far. Pacific narrowly edged Valor. That was a really good game as well, by 1-0 in the doubleheader on Wednesday. That caps off a fantastic midweek when we had a 4-goal thriller in York as Martin Nash's side split the points with Halifax Wanderers. Some great goals and some fantastic individual performances on that one that will be highlighted in the team of the week. This past weekend, Ali Musi's late free kick secured Cavalry 3 points in a 2-1 win over York United. Diego Gutierrez continued his fantastic season when his penalty was enough for Valor to defeat Vancouver FC by 1-0 in Winnipeg on Sunday. And an instant classic in Hamilton saw Forge beat Atletico Ottawa in a clash of champions versus champions, in the end in front of close to 7,000 on Sunday evening by 4-3. That's where we'll start the show. We'll bring on our very own Charlie O'Connor-Clark, who is with me in Hamilton. Charlie, great to see you. What a fantastic game of football for us neutrals. I don't think the coaches, necessarily enjoyed it as much as we did. We could write, they're pulling their hair out, but we know with Bobby and Carlos, there's very little to pull.
Yeah, I did, and then remembered.
Exactly. I'm excited for this next question. Regular listeners will know the first question I always ask my correspondents, what's your overall rating in terms of the contest from its compelling factor and why? So, Charlie, I'm just going to tee you up here. One of the best games in CPL history, lots of mistakes, drama. Overall, what number out of 10 would you give this contest in terms of compelling factor and why? What did you like?
Yeah, 10, 11. This game is the reason that I keep my ratings measured and conservative. This was simultaneously the weirdest, most chaotic, most entertaining, most fun Canadian Premier League game I think I've ever been in attendance at. Probably the best that I've ever watched at all. This was an outstanding game, and I think every time I've watched the highlights maybe 6 or 7 times this morning, and every time I remember something that happened in this game that doesn't even make the top 5 craziest things that happened, but in a normal game might be the story of the match. It's just, it starts so weirdly. I think half the very robust crowd at Tim Hortons Field wasn't even in their seats yet by the time it's 1-1 5 minutes into the game. That's just the Gabriel Antinoro goal. We're still not 100% sure yet on if that's going to be a couple milliseconds after Francisco Acuña's in PEI. We had just after that the weird back pass from McDonald Neba, which goes into the net. I don't know if this is wind or whatever at Tim Hortons Field. And then again, a back pass from Tissot, and it's 2-1 after 11 minutes for Forge after conceding 22 seconds in. I don't know what to say. There's just so much about this game that was really just we'll remember this one for a very long time.
You're right. So many different individual moments you keep thinking about. I think we're conditioned as analysts or viewers of fans of the game that you watch a game really closely, certain individual moments stand out, and then it's basically a game that's remembered by one or two moments in a game. This just happens to flood our minds of like 7, 8, 9. No, you've got to remember the 10th as well. It was that nuts. Our friend Arto wants us to come up with a nickname for this game. He says the 4-3 Forge versus Ottawa game is truly one of the great games in CPL history. It's going to need its own name for early consideration. He nominates the Sunday Night Melee in the Cafe. Okay, well, we'll come up with some different ones as well, but I don't know. All I know is that it was a pleasure to be there, Charlie, with you to watch it. It was crazy. Let's talk a little bit more about Forge, and trust me, Atletico Ottawa fans, I know you're here in the chat. We'll get to your team in a second. Forge had no goals in 3 coming in. They were winless in 5. They were, for the first real time, either on the canvas or up against the ropes as a CPL club. Things have been not going well for them. The football gods, though, were in their favor here, Charlie. Bobby Sminiotis mentioned it afterwards. They've had chances galore during this poor run and just could not score. And then suddenly they were gifted not 1, but 2 gifts from Atletico Ottawa to go, you know what, you can't score, so we're just going to let you, we're going to give it to you instead. So they get given those gifts, they get the lead, but then it isn't enough for them to be given the lead. No, they have to hand it back and then show that they can find a way to win it. And that's, I think, was interesting one here. I think you called them, you wrote in your analysis, responding to adversity. Is that the major topic here, that Forge were able to get it done and find a way? Because ultimately there's a lot of things we can get into individually, but Forge did find a way to win this after they threw it away.
I think so. And it's weird because, yeah, you look at that goal 20 seconds in and it's just a deflating moment in Hamilton. You see the shoulders sag a little bit. It feels maybe like this is as a player, I think if you're on the pitch in that moment, you maybe start to feel like nothing is just going the right way for your club at the moment. And then all of a sudden it absolutely is. Just the reversal of fortunes in such incredible fashion is strange. But Forge, again, yeah, they find their way back into that game after they're gifted that goal to equalize it. They kind of huddle at the center of the pitch. Woobens Passy has talked about it a little bit. He said that they just decided, they said in that moment, we've been handed this opportunity to get back into the game. We have to make the best of it. And then they did in the rest of the first half. They played very well, I think, and were very dangerous. Scored again shortly after, again off a defensive error, but still. And then once again, when they let Ottawa back into the game, not something that Forge often do. I looked it up. They've never blown a 2-goal lead in their entire club history. They do that here at Tim Hortons Field. But then again, they're back on the score sheet. They win the game. They get all 3 points. Forge, I also looked this up, 6 times this year, within 10 minutes of conceding an equalizer or go-ahead goal, they've scored again. They've answered. So obviously, they didn't really score the equalizer the first time in this game, but that's still incredible for this team to pull this one out. And I think it's one where we've spoken about some other games with other teams earlier this season about how a narrative can shift incredibly with a moment, and maybe not even a moment that is caused by the team themselves. But again, this is a game where if Forge hadn't scored that winner, if Woobens Passius doesn't score that header after they blow the 2-goal lead, we're talking about a very different story for Forge today, but they won the game. And that's really all that matters. And sometimes that's what you need to get the confidence back and get back on the horse, really.
Yeah, first win since May 27th, so almost a month for Forge in the CPL. And after that, we have to remember when they won their last win was also against Atletico Ottawa Schwanya late in that game. A bit of a dagger as well that carried on their unbeaten run to start the season to 7. But since then, they've gone 5 games without a victory in the CPL. Let's go back to Tim Hortons Field for this one. Let's hear the thoughts of Forge FC head coach. Here's Bobby Sminiotis.
Quite the entertaining start to a game. If you're not a coach of either team, it's hard to say. We've had a tough last few games, creating a lot, doing a lot, not getting the results, and then 35 seconds in, the ball is in your net. You could have the thoughts of, this is going to be interesting again, but it's something we talked about, leading up to this game, is just making sure that we're composed in anything that's occurring on the pitch, and I think that's the most important thing. because there's two teams on the field and each one are trying to do the same thing. I don't think there's many teams that step on the field and say, I don't want to score a goal today. So you have to take that as your starting point. And the football gods find a way of neutralizing things. That's one thing I know over my 4 years plus here. We've had a lot of high moments. We've had some difficult moments. But if you're doing the right things week in, week out, and apart from one game this year where I thought we were very poor, I think we've been doing a lot of the good things. So today it was important for us to have 3 points and score some goals. The rest, forget about it.
Well, we won't forget about it, but we'll do what we can to try and analyze it. It's just a class act again from Bobby. Interesting developments in Ontario around coaches right now, so I'll keep an eye on that maybe. But I'll say this. The collective storyline for me is the fact that they were able to come back. But what about individuals, Charlie? Ultimately, individuals in this game were able to step up. Terran Campbell, Woobens Passius. There was a lot of players there that I think, Sean, maybe even some for Ottawa as well. What did you think, and who are some of your greats that stood out?
Yeah, I think for me, when we talk about individuals in this game, what stands out to me is a couple moments of personal responsibility and coaches showing faith in players. We spoke about it yesterday. Kadeem Kane, this young player for Forge, who had a difficult midweek. Obviously, he gives the ball away for one of those goals in Vancouver for Forge, an 18-year-old player. At a moment where, some coaches might take that kid out of the lineup and maybe bury them in a squad for a couple of games after a mistake like that. And by I suppose a combination of faith in his young player and not having a lot of other players available due to injury, Bobby gives him another chance immediately on the weekend to start in midfield in this game. And Kadeem Kane had an outstanding performance against Ottawa in this game. It's a massive bounce back for a very young player that Bobby went out of his way to compliment in his post-match comments. He played a very good game right next to Kyle Becker, who was also outstanding in this game, really starting to hit his stride, I think, at the moment, after obviously he missed a lot of games at the beginning of the year, and now he's starting to really be in that starting 11 every week and look exactly like the Kyle Becker that we've seen in the last 5 years in the CPL, and that's again, tremendous for Forge. And then obviously the players that you mentioned at the start of this question, Passius and Campbell, I don't think there's any better thing to come out of this game for Forge than for those players to get on the score sheet. Passius hadn't scored in 11 games, I think, in all competitions heading into this one. He'd scored a couple at the start of the year, but now he's back on the horse. And Terran Campbell, I mean, as Bobby mentioned, kind of in his post-game comments, nobody's really running away and scoring at the moment. Campbell is now tied for third with 4 goals in the CPL. So all of a sudden things look a little bit happier in the goal scoring department for Forge. And just really quickly in Ottawa, I think there are some individual performances still, but one I do want to shout out is Maxime Tissot, who again, moment of personal responsibility, gives the ball away for that second goal. But then as a leader in his team, he takes over the captain's armband at halftime. He steps up, he takes the ball for that free kick, and he scores it, right? He's a former Forge player. He gives it to those fans a little bit who had been beaking at him earlier in the first half, which, they rightly should after that second goal. But again, a moment of individual leadership, I think, to step up and score that goal.
Yeah, I'm all for that as well. Absolutely, no doubt. Every credit. You talked about it. He scored the winning goal, and I met with him after the game. Here's some post-game reaction from Tim Hortonsfield.
Post-game reaction brought to you by Allstate. Where do we start? A 7-goal thriller here at Tim Hortons Field, just finished with the hero himself, Woobens Passius, who got the 7th goal, the winning goal. What are your immediate emotions after that one, Woobens?
I don't even have the words. It's been a tough 5-6 games for us, and to be able here to come and score, because we didn't score for the past few games, it's incredible. And again, like I always do, I thank God for these moments, because it's important for us.
Amen, well said. Listen, you go down after 22 seconds, tied for the fastest goal ever in CPL history, and then you get a fortunate goal yourself, and then there's a bit of a huddle that takes place. What's going on in the mind? What's being spoken at that point between the team?
After the first goal, it was difficult, but if you look, everyone was ready to go again, and I think that's the good mentality that we have to have every game. And then we scored, and we keep it that way. Even when Ottawa scored and came back to the game, we were focused and we were able to score that goal.
You go up 3-1, then you concede 3-2, then you concede 3-3. It always seemed like there's going to be another one, and you got that one. I believe it's the first goal in over 10 hours of CPL play for you in CPL. What's that drought been like, and what did it feel like when it went in?
It's incredible. To be able to score is the best feeling for me. And even if I couldn't score for the past few games, to come here and give that game winner, it's incredible, and happy for that.
Last one for you, Wibbers, you mentioned it. The team's been through a bad run, probably the worst run you've had in club history. Obviously just a point from 5 games. What did it mean to you to get a victory in that way? What does it mean over the last few weeks to be able to turn this around and get your first win for a month?
It means a lot. We needed that one. And I think it's good. And it's good for everyone, for the team. And it gives a statement to the league that we're back and we want to give more.
This is pretty special Sunday night. No,
yes,
we've got over
yes,
7,000 here.
Yeah.
We've got Ottawa players right outside of the camera here, just lying down in disbelief. This is what football's all about, no?
Exactly. That's why it's the best sport in the world.
It's great. Congratulations on the goal, my man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Great stuff from Woodman's Passius, who again needed that goal, as I said, over 10 hours of CPL action before he got there. Let's talk Atletico Ottawa, Charlie. In fact, before we get your take on it, let's go back to Tim Hortons Field and hear from the man himself, Carlos Gonzalez, who addressed the media after this one, their head coach.
They were matching all our players. You know, they were playing 4-2-3-1 against our system that is man-to-man everywhere. And we were not winning deals. So we had to create superiorities by other things. That's why we decided to change the system, to look for superiorities, to look to create from there and find the spaces that we wanted on the game plan. So I think it worked, you know. But at the end of the day, we give up the game like twice, first half and second half.
As usual, brutally honest. They scored 3 goals, really good goals, and still lost. That's never easy to take, Charlie. I know in the end, they gave away 4 bad ones, but Carlos Gonzalez had some strong words, said they lack concentration, lack focus, need to be more competitive. Didn't hold things back here, as he was very angry.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's understandable. When you score 3 goals in a game, you expect to win it, especially if you're going away from home and putting the ball in the net like that. It's such a strange game and such a strange feeling for Atletico Ottawa. And in those comments there, Carlos is talking about the triple substitution that they made at halftime, where he felt like forwards were kind of matching them man to man. They couldn't get through them. So he adds a little bit more directness and pace with Assi and Johnny Dos Santos coming in on the wings and Zachariah Bahus coming into midfield. And he gets Miguel Acosta back to his natural right back. And then it's Bahus and Dos Santos that combine for the equalizing goal. So Ottawa were playing some of the best football they've played this year in kind of the 30-ish minutes coming out of halftime. And I thought they looked very good at times and probably had done enough in that second half to be worthy of that comeback and to get something out of this game. But again, it's just such a strange thing where there's one moment where the concentration dips and it's just not there. And you know, Poku sends in an excellent cross from the left, and Pasillas manages to get free of his marker and make a very good run and get his head on a ball. So again, Ottawa, I don't think you can get too high or low after this game. I think especially if you're Gonzalez, you maybe throw a lot of the tape out in this game. But yeah, I think it's definitely a feeling of kind of a shock on the ride back from Hamilton to Ottawa last night. It would probably feel a little bit like being punched in the face and just not really knowing what happened. Probably a little bit dazed after that one, because it's going to be one that, you know, they have to maybe digest a little bit.
Digest is a good word. After it is only week 11, but for a long time, a lot of those players took a long time to come off the pitch, sitting on the bench in disbelief, staring at the bottom of the ground, just like, you know, shocked that they were unable to get that. But they have now conceded 8 goals in their last 3 away games, Cavalry, York, and Forge. That was not the case last year. That is something they've got to figure out fast. All right, Charlie, we're going to move on pretty quickly, but what is next for these two? Short week, short turnaround, and some exciting games for both.
Yeah, quick little turnaround. Both these teams on the road on Friday night. Ottawa, they're heading out west to Pacific in a rematch of last year's CPL semifinal after this week's final rematch. And Forge are out on the East Coast in Halifax in what'll be a pretty entertaining, pretty exciting game for both of those teams in Nova Scotia. So it's a pretty fun Friday doubleheader in the CPL this week.
Should be exciting. Don't forget to check, of course, all games live on One Soccer. And as usual, Charlie's analysis and words can be read at campl.ca. We appreciate you, Charlie. Thanks again for this. From Hamilton, we move to Calgary, Alberta, where we bring in our own Benedict Rhodes to recap another thriller and another game where a lead was relinquished and then recovered. Trends in the CPL continue to happen. Overall, Benny, what number out of 10 would you give this one? As York United just narrowly lost this game by 2-1 with a late Ali Musi goal. What did you like about it?
I think a 7.5 is probably fair. I think, it was a pretty good one overall. I think, Cavalry, you said took the lead in this game in the second half. There was a first half maybe where both teams had their chances, but were maybe struggling to take advantage of them. And then after the break, that kind of changed. Where, unfortunately, on YouTube, you saw an excellent finish by young Gauthier and Tigny, who was fantastic in this game. And then, York, as they have been doing of late, battled back and were able to find an equalizer through Moba Booley. And it looked like this game was going to be, an even 1-1 draw, which seemed fair for both sides. But then a moment of magic from Ali Musi was the difference in the end, and fantastic free kick, and he comes up huge again for for Cavalry as he has done several times in his career.
Yeah, so certainly Winnipeg man allowed that Valor connection there as well from previously. A game of individual brilliance, no? I mean, it looked like with Babouli's goal that York were going to go on and get something. At that point, we're playing really well. But to see Babouli and Musi shine is I think, a real shining light for the CPL.
Yeah, but the best part about this league and this sport is when the stars show up and do what they're paid to do and what we kind of expect them to do, and we saw that in this game. Musi and Babouli, two of the best players in this league on their day, and both of them stepped up big when their teams needed them.
Let's talk Cavalry, Benny. The story around them heading into this was how many points they continue to leave on the table from winning positions. Again, here they were up 1-0, then they conceded one. It looked like it could be a familiar trend. Then Musi steps up and scores. How big was it, not only to get that 3 points, but just to kind of move away from that growing trend that was developing Calgary a little bit?
Yeah, I think both are very important. Look at the table and the 3 points itself. They kind of moved a little bit closer to York, who in the past week have lost to two teams who are directly battling them, I guess, for playoff spots. And so that was huge in that sense. And like you said, dropping points for winning positions is always difficult for any team. And to kind of break away from that trend and then to go on and come back and get the full 3 points is very important.
Let's talk a little bit about the greats in a second. But before that, let's go back to Spruce Meadows at Atco Field and hear from the star man himself. Here's Ali Musi.
It's big for confidence, obviously. I feel like I've been close and kept on getting close and close, and it's nice to actually score. I thought overall it was a good team performance, though. I don't want to take anything away from that. I think we worked very hard on both ends, and I think we deserved the 3 points.
Typical Ali then taking away the attention from himself, but it has to be said, undoubtedly one of the stars of the league this season, arguably one of the best players in the league. You mentioned it earlier, Musi, Babouli were terrific. Time for a list of your greats. Benny, who are some of the individuals that stood out for you watching this one?
Yeah, apart from those two, of course, I think the York kind of midfield duo behind Babouli, Jeremy Gagnon-Lapare and Brem Samar were both fantastic in this game. They play well with each other. They have a new partnership, as they keep saying, and as they start to get more consistency, I think that partnership will only continue to grow. And then for Cavalry, the two young wingers, Gauthier and Tigny and Garrett Smith-Doyle, both of them are fantastic in this game. Tigny has the goal, played a huge role in getting the free kick that led to Musi's goal as well, and both of them were electric in this game.
It's great to see young players shining. A shout out to Eric Cobbs as well. I thought played really well at the back. But you mentioned it. Let's go back to Atco Field, get some reaction from York. Now, here's Jeremy Gagnon-Lapare talking about that midfield partnership developing. Now he's back fully fit with Brem Samaro.
I've only been back for 2 weeks now, so it's been very nice to get a bit of consistency and playing time. And everyone I'm gonna be playing here is a new partnership, because obviously it's my first year with York. But I thought the last couple of games we did well, and we understand each other pretty good. And he's a good all-around player, and can compensate when I do something, and I can do the same for him when he does something. So it's been good the last few games. Something we can build on.
We're just a couple minutes away from Tommy Wheeldon Jr. joining us live. Anybody got the questions from, just feel free to put them in the chat. As for York, it was always going to be tough, Benny. A third game in 6 days in 3 different provinces. They played well at Pacific and lost in the 88th minute. They played decent against Halifax in a 2-2 game and conceded a late goal in that one as well. So tough games in terms of conceding late, but they played well enough to maybe get something in this game. Do you think overall that they were frustrated not to come away with a point?
I think so. I think they probably did deserve a point in the first half. I think they had some big chances. Also, I think the one that Austin Ricci, for example, where he was only a couple of yards out of the net and kind of just scuffed his shot wide. But I think the chances were there for them to maybe pick up a couple more goals and at least 1 point. But I do think ultimately Cavalry, kept the pressure on and maybe took advantage of some tired York legs, as you mentioned, and were able to sort of find that difference in the end.
I know Ozzy Di Rosario was on the bench in this game and didn't coming on. I heard that he got a little bit of a niggle from the travel as well, so didn't necessarily feel 100%. That's probably why he wasn't one of the 5 substitutes in that game as well. Let's go back to Spruce Meadows in reaction from York United. Here's their head coach, Martin Nash.
I was real pleased with the performance. I think it was a really even game. Tough for us, third game in 5 days or 6 days with, going West Coast back to Toronto and back out here. So I think the guys put in a shift and, felt a little bit short, but, it was a quality strike to win the game.
Yeah, lots of quality strikes in this one. All right, they talk about the travel. It doesn't get much easier for York. Benny, before we let you go, what's next for these two? What's on tap for both these clubs?
Yeah, so Cavalry head to Winnipeg on Saturday for Canada Day game. 2 teams in the middle of the table, sort of battling out for positions. I think that'll be a good one. And then on Sunday, York are on the West Coast again. They're playing Vancouver FC for the first time, I believe, in Langley.
They're getting their frequent flyer miles in for sure. That's a tough challenge for York United at the moment, but every club goes through it. We know that. We always enjoy your presence, Benny. Again, continue the great work. Benedict Rhodes, CanPL.ca as usual. We continue to talk more about Cavalry, and we go out to Calgary now live as we bring in our man, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. to join us. Tommy's got his coffee ready, I think. It's a little bit early out there, but as usual, Tommy, thanks for joining us, my man. Great to see you. And as we say, Monday morning's always better after a win, no?
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, it's always nice being home anyway, and our home record always speaks to that. But 3 points is just, it's strange. I was having this conversation with my son. I said, here's the thing about football. I said, every week you prepare to beat your opposition. So when you do it, you're like, okay, we were meant to do that. When you don't, you're frustrated because that's what is expected of you. It's a strange profession to be in, KJ, that's for sure.
It certainly is, mate. But you got more dark hair than grey. You're doing something right.
Yeah, that's probably just product today. Yeah.
As usual, we love the honesty. Lots to get into with you. I want to talk more about the team in a second, but I want to start with Ali because obviously he did get the winner for you, and he's been absolutely terrific this year. He's always wanted to talk about the team, but have you noticed anything different this year as he's gone to another level, or what have you seen in terms of his dedication for the cause this year and playing for you so consistently well every week?
Yeah, I think with Ali, he's at the age and stage now, and I think the renewal of his contract kind of give him the confidence and the trust in himself to now just go and explore. He's always had the ability. I remember him playing against him when he was 16, 17-year-old lad at the Whitecaps residency. And then obviously he joined me in 2017 with the Calgary Foothills group. So much talent. I think for him was now learning how to be a professional, how to be disciplined in your craft. He had a great off season. I don't think he really, other than a week holiday somewhere, he was always in the gym. He was always on the training ground. He's been working on his craft. And right now, all I see in him is just this stone cold focus on the game, on the opponent, on trying to be the best player he can be. And he's very good in opening a game. He can have that moment of brilliance of his little quick sidestep. He's got incredible shooting range. And you've seen on the weekend that poise in that moment to capture the win for us was just, that's been Ali. So dialed in.
So dialed in indeed. I haven't been out to Calgary yet this season. I will get there. But what is seemingly very noticeable to me, again, is the educated crowd, Tommy. It was a game on the weekend where you were up and you looked like you're going to win it. You went down with a screamer from Babuli. And the great thing about this sport, doesn't matter where you're playing it, on the park or whatever, if you get that confidence and you get people giving you that boost from the sidelines and you need it in those key moments, that's what fans are for. No? And I thought the fans were absolutely terrific in the second half. That, Intigne's run almost exploded and got them out of it. And then the free kick that led to it, I think came a lot of it from that fan base. What was that like there? Did you feel that energy coming from them to almost get you over the line?
Our fans, certainly, I know it sounds cliche at times, are our 12th man. They just give us that boost, and hence why probably, I don't know what the data points are, we've probably got the strongest home record in league history.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, so, and large part is down to them. They literally G the boys up. Even at halftime, we talked about a couple of moments, how we could cut York open. And the first goal was exactly like that, because we had a move just prior that was just off, very similar to the pattern we were working on. But, when you got someone like Gote, I always think of myself, if I'm them, what do you want to see? You want to see an Ali Musi drop a shoulder. You want to see a Dan Klomp coming through a commanding header. You want to see Charlie Trafford, tackling somebody, or Jesse Day tackling someone in midfield. And then Gote Natigne, I think he's the fastest player I've ever worked with. And when he ran in front of us, it was just like Usain Bolt running past us. But the foot soldiers were just sucking him in from that side. And I watched the game again yesterday, and I didn't notice it in the game. But when Babuli scored, you can actually hear them singing Cavalry. And I'm like, I only noticed it afterwards, because right away you kind of recalibrate, okay, what can we do next? And watching the game back, I'm like, the players can hear that. We've just gone, and it was a screamer. There's nothing Marco could have done about that. That's Babuli's quality. But for our fans to be singing that, and, when Jose goes on, they're singing for his name. It's just, it gives us that lift. And the 3 points are deserving, and credit to them.
You mentioned Jose. Let's get into it a little bit. And I know there's only certain things we can say. Foot soldiers are asking questions in the chat about if anything's going to be announced in the league and the club. I would just say, just wait your time. There's lots of things that evolve in this, and there's nothing that the club and the league can announce at this moment. But it was a special day for him. Ultimately, 100 appearances. We saw it with Marco, a CPL Centurion, Tommy, and that's what clubs are built on. No foundational pieces like that. Whether he moves on or whatever happens next. I'd like to know what you think Escalante has led the impression on other players, as that's football anyway, whether they move on today or they move on in 5 years, that the ability to continue to pass on that message about what playing for that football club means, I would imagine, is pretty priceless.
Yeah, well, what I can say, there's no confirmed exit strategy at this point. What I can confirm is, as a human being, he's missed his family. He's been away from his 5-year-old son this year. He's been away from his wife since January of this year. And he's been heartbroken because of it. So he's come to us as a football club and just asked for some special dispensation, which is what we've given him. What we're trying to figure out next as a football club and as a league is what that looks like, because he's contracted to us through to a 2024 option. Is it temporary? Is it loan? Is it permanent? So what we're giving him is time. And I think that, in the light of things we've been through in, this generation with the pandemics and things, family has to come first. And that's what we've done at this moment. What he's meant to the football club, you've seen it at the end of it. We said, let's get you through your 100 games and just, put pause on it. What he's meant to the fans, what he's meant to me as a person. There's two types of people that you work with, KJ, as a manager. There's transactional players that come in, represent the jersey and do it, brilliant, and then they leave and move on to the next club. And there's transformational people that come in and change the way you think about life, about the way you play the game, about, the community that you give to. He coaches in the community with Southwest United. He, integrates himself with the fans. He was one of the few players that turned up just on a fan night with his family last year. He's a transformational player and has helped me understand this league, the CONCACAF, the Honduran, the culture. And whatever happens next, I'll forever be thankful for the time we've got to work with him.
Very well said. We're going to get to some chat questions in a second, but I want to ask you about your overall impressions of the CPL in 2023. Tommy, we were at Hamilton last night, and Bobby came out and said that he thinks it's been a bit of a transitional league in terms of a lot of players always transition. There's not a lot of control in games this year, and maybe the teams are a lot closer. What have you seen this year in terms of how different it is? We've certainly seen the difference in results. We've seen a lot of leads that would have been in the past been kept, that had been relinquished, not just in Calgary, all across the league. We saw it again this weekend. What have you seen this year in terms of how the league's different? And is it, do you think, here to stay for the rest of the year with it being so close?
I think pure chaos, to be honest, KJ. It's I'm not sure. We're trying to weigh that up ourselves because the interesting thing is with the games in hand we've got, we're actually in a good place, but we felt like we haven't been getting the results, whether it be a mistake, a moment of brilliance, or a bad decision. They've been going, but it's not just us. I think the only one club you'd say that's had a really true and sustained run through the first 10 games has been Pacific, and now we're entering it there. But at some point, they're going to have to travel across the East, repeatedly, and it's going to test every single squad. I think what you're seeing is probably more quality. Every club now from top through bottom is well matched, and there's different ways to win football matches. So if you choose to defend deep and hit on the counter, power to you. Ottawa won it brilliantly. They won the regular season last year doing it, and they ground out results and had quality to cut you open. The hardest thing in football is to score goals. And you know that when come playoff, you've got to find a way to score goals that suit the players you have. I do think now, KJ, the other big difference is all teams have two formations and a third if things aren't going around. And what I mean by that is it's no longer a 4-3-3. It's just the names you put on a team sheet. Teams have an attacking formation and a defensive formation. And then if things change, they throw out a plan B. So you've got to be prepared now as a coach. I remember we spoke, I think it was in the 2021 bubble in Winnipeg, and the games against Forge, where we were cross-referencing and doing different patterns within the game. Every team's doing that. So I think the coaching is really improved, and the players' adaptability. So I've got family over from England now that are watching these games and going, everybody's trying to play, and it's only going to bode well for Canadian football moving forward. Is they're going to be tactically more versatile going into international football, CONCACAF football. When we see the successes of what Victor Lattori's had, and now Aaron Pepple's now got a chance to be in and around a Premier League environment, they're going to be well versed, and now they have to transform again. So it's really good.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love the answer about the coaching. You guys are taking this league to another level collectively. And Pacific are flying, but it has to be said that 9 of their first 13 games are at home, and they have got to go on that run themselves. So we're going to see maybe a little bit of parity coming in there as well. Some of the questions in the chat for Tommy, now celebrating our 50th as a league. Have you seen the CPL stature grow internationally, especially around the CPL's ability to attract international talent? You obviously involved in recruitment as well as coaching. Tommy, what's your kind of thought process when you talk all to these different clubs, agents, and players all around the world?
Yeah, I think now I tell you, and it's not just because I'm speaking with you, I do think now, because of Media Pro invested in One Soccer, it's now being exported around the rest of the world. It's interesting now, because wouldn't that be great if we saw it, being played in live TV homes as well in our own country? Because, people are in airports in Mexico or down in the States and watching it on Fox Soccer. I've got people in England watching it on BT Sport and texting me after the game. I've got cousins, friends, and families that are watching it worldwide. I think our worldwide exposure is so professionally done that, everyone talks about, say the MLS or USL, and what differentiates us, the way we do ours, is the way we deliver the product. I think that's really good. We've now created a trading history of players that are going on into other leagues and doing well. I think when you get a club like Atletico Madrid purchasing Ottawa to be part of their family, it's huge. So we're being validated for the Canadian men's to get to this World Cup, and then your Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David doing well, Kyle Laren's doing well. Suddenly now the brand of a Canadian is different than when a Nick Ledgerwood or Martin Nash played overseas. They're actually looking at this stock going, this is it, and now you're going to be part of the next 2026 World Cup. Hence why when we had the opportunity to bring Oliver Minatel back, we've got a big thing about players that have worn the crest. How can we create, like that Ajax, like that Manchester United, where you bring them through Bayern Munich, bring them through. Oliver Minatel is, we've got this thing, transfer room, where he deals with sporting directors, heads of recruitments, and they're all asking about these young Canadian players. So we're certainly in a golden era, and I think we're just at the start of it, because our brand is only going to get better and better.
Yeah, definitely. No doubt about it. CMAC says, for Tommy, Kobza has been a great surprise this season. I mentioned him earlier, both in central midfield and he also played in the back line this week. Not sure what you can say about the next one, but maybe if you can't, just talk about how good he's been. Is there a contract to convert him in the fall, or is he going back to the USC? He's been terrific for you, Tommy. Obviously, draft pick. I'm sure you didn't expect to play him as often as you have with the significant injuries you've had to Shamit and Callum, but just looks like he belongs.
He does. I've got to give credit to the UFC. They had him. He was their captain. Brendan O'Connell, their coach, spoke very, very highly of him. And, Brendan's had a really good pro experience himself. So when he says about this lad is ready, we took that seriously and we brought him away in pre-season. We fit in. We played him at the back. We played him in midfield. And, he's a different player than Joel Waterman. Joel could do both as well. Joel has that bit more of a poise and a finesse to him. Eric has that bit more of a bite to him, but both can do similar roles. So we love him. We want to keep him around for a long time. We're going to be working on what that looks like here in the next little while because we've got that August 1st release or retain date. But what I can confirm is we'll be retaining him. That's for sure.
Fantastic news. All right, last one for you, Tommy. What's the plan going in? You're almost at mid-season. Do you still feel, obviously, I'm sure you still feel really comfortable with what's going on in terms of how you're playing. What's to come, in terms of injuries to return back, like what's Shamit and Callum's status? And then what's the plan going forward into the next few weeks in terms of, building towards trying to get back into that playoff spot and stay there?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, we'll feel like we've got 3 new signings when, Joe Mason's just come back in, he's now behind Sergio in the second leading scorer in the club, which is a really good challenge to have because both of them are team guys, but they actually have a little bit of a competition within them. And now Maya Bevan scoring, it adds into another depth piece. Shamit Shom is back full training this week, so we're going to assess him over the next week or two. Terrifically intelligent and a great runner. I think he adds energy and quality in midfield. And then Callum Montgomery, weird injury, like the fascia on his foot tore, and it's not like a muscle where you repair it. It takes a bit of time. So we're hoping by mid to end of July he'll be returning to training. So that's really good. We've got a little bit of movement this transfer window, but in a positive way. We want to increase our under 21 minutes. That's something we want to look. Goatee's done great. Gareth Smith-Dore's done great. But we feel that we need to add another, coming through that can, play consistent minutes for us. So that'll be coming up. And then, then maybe there's one other piece that we're going to look at in the transfer window before it closes at the end of August. So, yeah, it's good. We're in a good place because I think we've shown some good things this year. I think we can be better, and I do, and I feel it. And I think the result on the weekend against York, who are a really good side, showed that we've got that quality and the grit that we've had in the past, and that's what you're going to need for the second half of the season.
Yeah, great answer as usual. So insightful, as you said. Like it's still anybody's game, no? Like that top spot, to get that home field advantage, and also with potential teams winning a double and a potential spot in the Champions League. There's a lot to play for, Tommy, and there's plenty of teams who still believe they can win this.
Absolutely, and we're one of them, right? We've still got to play some of the top sides 2 or 3 more times. So win your series, and then you put yourself in the best possible spot. If you're the first to lift the new trophy, wouldn't that be a great one?
Certainly would. Tommy, always a pleasure. We can't thank you enough to spend a little bit of time with us this morning. Keep up the great work. Congrats on a fantastic win again and a tremendous atmosphere that you've helped continue to create at Spruce Meadows. Keep up the great work, mate.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks again to Tommy Wheeldon Jr., always gracious with his time and a class act in the CPL. We remind you can still play CPL Predictor weekly, brought to you by our friends at TonyBet, campl.ca/predictor. Choose the correct scores. You can win $20,000. Tickets to games. It's all there on the site. Our final stop of the show takes us to Winnipeg, where we bring in our own Alex Ganguruzic as Valor FC defeated Vancouver FC by 1-0. A close one, AGR in this one. Overall, what number out of 10 would you give this contest and its compelling factor, and why? What did you like about this one?
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting match between the two kids, I guess, the two VFCs, but also the teams that have been playing all the U21 minutes. And I feel like it made for an interesting game on that regard. Ultimately, it ended up being a lot cagier than I expected. Valor at home, that's what they do. They know how to control the game and control what they're good at. So in terms of a factor, I'll give it a 5, but there was a lot to be interested about. It Valor were a bit frustrated after midweek where they went to Pacific. They did well, but some Eamon Salouf magic and Easton Ongaro magic kind of undid them in the end. So they were eager to get a win, continue their strong home form, now up to undefeated in 13 straight games, their first back-to-back home wins of the season after beating Forge a couple weeks back. So for Valor, there was obviously that implication. Then for Vancouver, is just trying to build off that win in midweek where they had all the U21 minutes, all the young players, just an average age of 21.9. And I think because of that, it was fascinating to see just some of these players on display. The fact that both teams cleared their U21 minutes for the year was also a bit of a special milestone. And in the end, Valor did dominate the game, were deserved winners, and continue to be a team that's slowly climbing up the rankings after a bit of a worrying few weeks there.
Yeah, they had that run after the first week of the victory where they went winless in 8, and things didn't necessarily, even though there were some draws there, things didn't necessarily look like they're going their way. Suddenly they found ways to win at home, as you mentioned, back-to-back wins now. They beat Forge, and then they beat Vancouver. And that's the beauty of football, right? In a close league, 3 points just feels so enormous compared to 1. And the milestones you mentioned are great to see. Both teams passing the under 21-minute mark in this game. That's what it's about. It's not about climbing to the end and just trying to get over. It's about developing these young players, which is great to see. Let's talk a little bit more about Valor, AGR. You had a fantastic comprehensive breakdown of the analysis of this game and what worked for them. You called them a professional outfit, which I thought was pretty good. How impressed were you with them, as this team looks like a side that very few teams have been able to break down so far in the CPL?
Absolutely. And I think full credit has to be given to Phil DeSantos, his head coach, his staff, and just the players for buying into it, because ultimately this is a team, other than that Halifax game a few weeks ago, and Phil mentioned it in the press conference after, it's kind of almost haunts him in a way. They've just been so committed and to their identity, and you see it every game. You know that they want to defend. They want to have that solid mid block. They want to stretch the field out. They want to get the ball to their strikers. And I think there's just that commitment can be, you can applaud that. I think, like you mentioned, there's still more for them to hit, but I just think the fact in terms of teams being committed to their identity, you know what Valor is. And how many times in the past where you didn't know that? You said, oh, there's some good pieces there. There's some good defenders, some good attackers. There's something just doesn't quite look right. When you watch this Valor team, you know what they want to do. And I think this game was the best example of it, because pretty much from minute 1, Pacific Nyamagabir was back, which is huge, and they missed him dearly over those 2 games. He was off at AFCON qualifiers with Burundi, and he just immediately gets the ball. He stretches the field. He wants to take guys 1v1. Jared Alo on the other side also had a quietly good game and, benefited off the space that Nyamagabir provides. And then from there, they just control the game in midfield. Gutierrez is just having a blinder of a season, the way he can control matches, can get involved. And then from there, just the flexibility. And I think that's the biggest part about their identity, right? That's, we talk about all these injuries. No Mateo de Brienne over the last few weeks, the center back crisis, you can call it, fullbacks being injured, midfielders. It's kind of a credit to how clear and identifiable the system is, that if one day Walter Ponce is playing at left wing, he's comfortable playing that. If Dante Campbell's playing at left back, he knows what his role is. And I think that comes down to that clear identity, and it's showing off in the way that Valor, no matter if the results aren't coming, you know what they're going to do. And in games like this, when it comes off, it looks very professional. It looks very clean.
Yeah, very, very well said. Let's go back to IG Field in Winnipeg and hear from their head coach. Here's Philip DeSantos.
It's one of those that, and we were talking about it, we played similar games maybe 12 months ago, and we would come out with a draw and not finding a way. And I agree with you with the dominance that it was. 1 goal seems short, but at the end of the day, it's 1 step forward, right? We know, as a coach, what you have to keep progressing on. A lot of the last couple of days have been about being a little bit more pragmatic and aggressive, getting forward, not always looking for the perfect play, the perfect action, getting players in higher positions. And today, we saw that had we been a little bit more ambitious in certain moments of the game, maybe you could get out of the game with 2 or 3 goals more than what you scored in reality. So for me, it's if I'm not creating, if we're not getting players in good spots, that worries me a little bit more.
Okay, AGR, time for the list of your greats in 60 seconds or less. Who impressed on both these teams?
Yeah, I think for Valor was Diego Gutierrez kind of led the way in that regard. Just was dominant on both sides of the ball. Got the winning penalty. So it was good to see from him. Nyanga Beer was huge in his return. But a guy I feel like it doesn't really get a lot of shouts, and Phil DeSantis did talk about him after the game, is Juan Pablo Sanchez. He's eligible for U21 minutes. He's Canadian, but he's kind of just flown under the radar there in Valor. He plays in midfield and he gets things done. He has these way of playing these clever passes. He works extremely hard off the ball, and I think he's been a huge addition in that midfield, and it's why Dante Campbell has been able to slot all over the pitch, and you kind of don't lose what he brings to the midfield. And then for Vancouver, it was a bit of a rougher performance for them versus midweek, but Callum Irving was excellent, and really, that's the benefit of having a goalie like that, is that maybe you don't have your best performance. He keeps you in it right till the very end. They could have easily rescued a point at the death, and that's why you want a goalkeeper like him in between the sticks. So huge game from Callum Irving and a long line of them this season, despite what the goals against record might suggest.
Yeah, very well said. Callum Irving and the team of the week that's getting announced this week very shortly. And of course, Juan Pablo Sanchez, I got him in there as well. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. A player, as you alluded to, has allowed them to play different ways, right? And Gutierrez can go further forward as well. But let's be honest, it was Gutierrez's game carrying them again. Let's go back to Winnipeg and hear from the skipper himself.
The room is always, when it's the preseason and now, it's always the same. The guys is really like the roommate. Every guy is good. The personality. So for me, it's the best locker room for me. So that's why the team is doing well.
Well said. Okay, AGR, you know this team, Vancouver FC, really well. You've seen them a ton live as well. They clearly need a fresh talent. They've got some significant injuries, some players who are probably not going to play for them anymore. Still got without Caden Chung. Elliot Simmons is hurt now. Obviously, Martinez was suspended still. Very young team. But again, this is the 8th time out of 12 where a game has been decided by 1 goal or less. That's impressive, even though they're not getting the victories. Your thoughts on that? And overall, you can see it is still an Ashton Gotby team, even though they've had a lot of changes in personnel.
Yeah, there's a lot to make of this Vancouver side. I kind of did write about it after the game, is that you're right. They're very disciplined. And almost you forget that at times, is that a game like this, Valor was all over them. They held their own. Again, it's important to remember that Tyler Crawford, Anthony White, Ibrahim Bakare, James Cameron, that's a back four of an average age of 20. Like, that's unheard of in professional sports. And you saw that midweek as well. You sub in Rocco Romeo for Bakary in the back line. He's 23. He's not adding much to that average age. And the fact they look so disciplined at their best shows, that they have a commitment to the system, especially defensively. Where they're going to have to figure things out is in the attack. And it just feels like the biggest issue that I've seen is that sometimes the pieces don't line up. Like, I think the biggest example is Amir Kanani up front in this game. Scored a great goal in midweek, was great to see because he's had some high energetic performances off the bench. He's not a striker that's going to be going out there and bullying defenders and wearing them down and back to goal and playing. He's a guy who's going to run around. He's going to press. He's going to play in between the channels. So I found it very fascinating that over the last 2 games, I think he's won 13 of his 30 aerial or 30 duels. Like, he's not a striker who wants to win duels. Yet there's moments where there's so many balls being hoofed to him. They're losing easy chances to maybe keep possession, play between the lines. And there's other examples like Batar and Sandoval, great between the lines. We're not seeing enough of them between the lines. TJ Dahid in his short time in the league has shown that he can run at defenders, and Minjae Kwok as well. Like, you kind of know what these guys are and what they do. And we're not maybe seeing Vancouver get those guys in enough of those moments. So I think that's going to be that next step of, okay, you kind of know who your profiles are. You know what Sean Hundell is going to bring. He's, maybe a bit more of a traditional number 9. You know what these guys can do. How can you get them on the ball in those regards? And to be fair, Gotby did make a good point when I asked him about what's missing for his attack. Their midfield will need a look. It will need an upgrade because, Caden Chung was playing there purely because they didn't have any better options. He looks great, then gets injured. And then this game, you have suspensions to Nima Moazeni, right? And that kind of leaves another one where you're playing a Marcus Simmons who hasn't really played all year, and Giles Sandoval pivot. One's mostly played as a fullback, but the other's a 10th. That's not going to, against the Valor team that dominates the midfield, you're not going to go very far. So first of all, for them, Vancouver, I feel like it starts and ends with the midfield. I think that'll help a lot of their offensive problems. And then from there, they have to adapt. Okay, you know what Handala is. You know what Kanani is. You know what these guys are. How do you get them in their preferred positions and spaces on the field?
Yeah, transfer window opening up very soon, and expect some key arrivals coming in out west as well. Let's go back to Winnipeg. Hear the thoughts of, you mentioned him, the aforementioned head coach of Vancouver Football Club. Here is Ashwin Gopi.
It's important to say that after such a great performance and a result at home against Forge, we had suspensions to one of our best central defenders and one of our important players in midfield, Nima. So now you come into the team already, we have more other suspensions and we have other injuries, and now you lose 2 other starting members. So with that situation, I think it was a heroic effort from our players. Some players getting their first start and playing as well as we did, in my opinion, until the penalty. And I'm proud of the performance until that moment. Of course, offensively, we could have been a little bit more clinical, more focused, more precise. But defensively, we did a fantastic job. The penalty changed the game, and our reaction as a team, I was not happy about being down 0-1. We needed to, at that moment, come out of our shell, show ourselves, and play more football and create more openings. And I think we didn't do well in that part.
The good news for Vancouver is the last time they lost 1-0 away, which was in Ottawa earlier this month. They returned home and won, and they return home again this week. AGR, what's next on the tab for these two teams?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big week, obviously. Canada Day long weekend, so lots of exciting soccer there. And Valor stays at home. They get to host Cavalry in what should be a very tasty game after Cavalry's heroics over the weekend. What a game that was! And then for Vancouver, they return home and they'll look to build off that first home victory. They get York, and that's going to be a tough. Poor York. They go from BC back to Ontario, back out to Alberta, and then BC again. So it's a long trip for York. So maybe Vancouver will look to capitalize on that and try to get another home win, their second straight.
That should be a pretty special one as we celebrate this wonderful country with some more CPL games across the long weekend. We'll get into that schedule shortly to let you know all those matches. AGR, we always appreciate you. Keep up the great work as ever. You can read AGR at One Soccer and, of course, at campl.ca. Have a good week, pal. Thanks for this. Let's take a look at the standings then through officially 11 weeks in the Canadian Premier League. Not every team has played 11. Of course, some teams have played more, but Pacific with a 5-point lead over Forge and 2 games in hand. Forge up to second place on 19 points from 13, and then it's really close. You can look at basically third down to 8th is just separated by 7 points. Third down to 6th is separated by 4. York are third on 17. Cavalry are fourth on 15, but have 2 games in hand on both Forge and York. Valor are in the coveted 5th and final playoff spot with 15 points from 12, just behind a surging Halifax Wanderers. Atletico Ottawa still 7th, and Vancouver Football Club 10 points from 12 are in 8th. Let's take a look at next week's schedule then in week 12 as the Canadian Premier League celebrates Canada Day long weekend, and we have 2 games for you on Friday. A fantastic doubleheader at 7 o'clock local in Halifax as the Wanderers take on Forge on Friday night, followed by another great game on Friday, this one out west at 6:30 local. On the island, as Starlight Stadium hosts Pacific against Atletico Ottawa in a rematch of last season's semi-final. Valor have the rights, I suppose, the privilege of hosting a game on Canada Day itself. 2 p.m. local in Winnipeg, they take on Cavalry. And then on Sunday, Vancouver Football Club hosts York United to finish it all off. And as usual, we'll be back next week to recap it all as well. A reminder, it is also Canadian Men's National Team Week. Canada are playing in the Gold Cup, and they're playing in Canada. Game is on Tuesday night at BMO Field, and they take on Guadeloupe as they kick off their Gold Cup journey as well. So tickets still available. You can check them out and go watch the Canadian Men's National Team on Canadian soil at BMO Field on Tuesday night. As usual, come to campl.ca for all of our coverage around the Canadian men and women's national team. Until then, have a great week celebrating Canada. We thank you for joining us, and we'll speak to you next week.
Forge, and they're blocking very open into the orange accents. Now here's Van Anten. Less than 20